Lieutenant Myra Raines woke to silence. The only sound was the faint hum of failing systems and the creak of bending metal. Around her, the scout ship's hull lay torn open like a wounded animal. Stars glimmered through the jagged holes. But no friendly ship answered her call. Myra's heart pounded as fear and hope tangled inside her chest. She forced herself to breathe in slow, steady counts, reminding herself that panic would only waste the little air she had left. She dragged herself from the pilot's seat to the access panel on the wall. Her fingers shook as she pried it open and exposed the blinking beacon circuits. Sparks flew, and she winced against the sting in her arm. Yet, with purpose born of survival, she reconnected loose wires one by one. Each click and flash gave her a flicker of confidence. When the beacon finally flared to life, she whispered, "Come find me," even though she knew she spoke to empty space. Mira sank to the floor and checked her suit gauges. Oxygen was down to 30%. Power reserves blinked low. A wave of grief washed over her, the thought that she might die alone, her body lost in the vast black. She pressed her palm to the cold hull, as if seeking reassurance from the steel around her. Memories of home flickered in her mind, the laugh of her little brother, the warm glow of her mother's smile. Those memories steadied her resolve. She would not give up. Above her, the ship's AI named Astra crackled to life. Its voice sounded distant, almost tired. "Lieutenant Raines, external environment is unstable. Recommendation: conserve resources." Mira gave a faint smile.
That's right, but conserve doesn't save lives.
She tapped commands into the console, diverting every spare watt to the beacon transmitter. The display showed a surge in signal strength. Mira closed her eyes, imagining anyone seeing that flare across the stars. Time stretched thin. She rubbed her temples, fighting the ache of exhaustion. Each breath felt like a battle.
Outside,
The swirling remnants of a recent asteroid collision pressed in, shifting the wreckage like a hungry tide. The sensors warned of debris storms and radiation pockets. Mira knew a rescue, if it came, would have to pierce through that chaos. But she believed in her people, in their skill and their courage. She clung to that belief as tightly as she clutched the console for support. Astra's soft chime broke her reverie. Signal transmission stabilized, awaiting response. Myra stared at the blinking dot on the screen, the only sign that her call might reach beyond the void. Her throat tightened with emotion, fear, longing, hope. She realized how much she missed the simple things: the hum of engines under full power, the chatter of her squad mates on the com channel, the steady rhythm of a safe journey home. Each memory was now a spark of determination. Mira stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the silent stars. In that infinite darkness, her own small light blinked defiantly. She whispered to the universe, "I'm here. I'm still here." Whether any soul heard her or not, she would not stop fighting. She straightened her shoulders and touched the glass with a gloved hand. Whatever came next, she had done everything she could. And as the beacon pulsed on, she dared to believe that someone, somewhere, would answer her plea. Captain Arden Cross ran a hand through his dark hair as the bridge alarms chimed softly. The scout ship Vanguard was long overdue, and now only a faint distress signal remained. Arden studied the garbled transmission on the main screen. Every time he played it, the crackling Raines SOS echoed in his mind. The crew exchanged worried glances. In that moment, the battleship Dauntless felt both massive and fragile. Like a giant heart straining to keep hope alive, Commander Lee stood beside Arden, her brow furrowed. "Sir, we've swept the nearby sectors twice. It's no life signs except that. Beacon pulse." Her voice was steady, but Arden heard the tremor beneath. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Keep scanning. Extend our range 3 more grids. Cannot leave Lieutenant Raines out there alone." On the communications, Console Ensign Patel tapped rapidly at the controls. Every scanned frequency and rerouted channel drew lines across the star map. "Signal strength is erratic," Patel reported softly. "Space debris and solar flares are interfering." Arden nodded. He knew those hazards well. They were part of the territory where explorers risked their lives for knowledge. Then we adapt, he said, voice firm. Divert extra power to the long-range arrays. If we burn a few more reactors, it's worth it. The crew moved with renewed purpose. Technicians in the engine room traced new energy conduits. Sensors officers calibrated every receiver. In the briefing room, junior officers whispered doubtful questions. Arden strode in and addressed them directly. We are explorers, scientists, soldiers, and we never abandon one of our own. Lieutenant Rains has the same creed. She called for us. Now it's our turn to answer. Murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Arden's words rekindled their resolve. He described the plan. Send 2 interceptor drones to act as signal relays, chart a safe corridor through the drifting asteroids, and launch short-range probes to map radiation pockets. It was risky. Any system failed, the drones could be lost. But Arden believed that risk defined humanity's spirit. Courage, he reminded them, is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward in spite of it. Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Ramos smiled at the challenge. She gathered her team around the fusion turbines. Let's show them what we can do, she said. Sparks flew as they rerouted power. The hum of the ship shifted, carrying a deeper tone of determination. By the time the interceptor drones launched, the Dauntless felt alive with purpose. Even the usual hum of routine duty had been replaced by electric anticipation. Back on the bridge, Arden watched the drones streak toward the wreckage field. On one of the holoscreens, the starfield was a tapestry of floating rocks and shifting shadows. The drone's status bars blinked green. They're on course, Patel announced. Yet Arden's gaze remained on the distant beacon icon, a tiny dot flickering defiantly in the void. He leaned against the railing and closed his eyes. Memories flooded him. The day he took command of Dauntless. The faces of sailors he had trained, the relief of bringing them home after every mission. All those years, he had learned that a single signal, a single life, mattered more than any star chart or victory. At that thought, his heart tightened. Mira Rains was more than a lieutenant. She was part of the human family he had sworn to protect. Suddenly, the intercom crackled. Sir Patel's voice came, sharper now. We're picking up a response. It's faint, but definite. A hush fell. Arden straightened. The faint reply sounded like a whisper across light years. Help. Here his pulse quickened. Analyze it, he ordered. The bridge crew leaned in as the signal was filtered and amplified. The voice gained clarity, Mira's voice. Tears rose in Arden's eyes as he heard her strength shining through. Lieutenant Rains, he said, voice thick. We hear you loud and clear. Hold on. We are coming. Around him, cheers erupted. Officers clapped shoulders and smiled through relieved tears. The Dauntless had found its way through chaos, too. An answer that mattered above all. As the crew prepared for the final rescue maneuver, Arden stood tall. He addressed them one more time. This is what we do. No matter the darkness, no matter the danger, we answer the call of another human soul. That is who we are. The bridge roared in agreement. In that moment, amidst the stars and the wreckage, hope burned brighter than any cosmic storm. And somewhere out there, Mira Rains would know she was not alone. Lieutenant Myra Rains sat in the dim glow of the wrecked cockpit, her fingers tracing the worn edges of the control panel. Every button she touched felt like a promise of rescue. The ship's AI Astra hummed quietly beside her, its calm voice a small comfort. Lieutenant, external interference is rising, Astra warned. Mira nodded, her gaze fixed on the fractured viewport. She knew debris storms could cut off her signal at any moment, but she refused to let fear rule her. She would do everything she could to keep the beacon alive. Using scraps of metal from the hull, Mira built a makeshift antenna. She connected wires and circuit boards as carefully as a surgeon. Sparks flew and her suit visor fogged with sweat. She paused to catch her breath, pressing a hand to her pounding heart. Then she pressed on, thinking of home. Her mother's soft voice and her father's proud look when she graduated. Those memories fueled her strength. With a final twist, The antenna clicked into place. Mira held her breath as she activated the new rig. The beacon flared twice as bright. Mira watched the signal meter spike with hope, yet static crackled through the speakers, drowning out her own voice. "This is Lieutenant Rains," she whispered. "Please respond." She repeated her message again and again, pouring all her will into each syllable. Outside, an asteroid chunk scraped the hull, sending a tremor through the ship. Myra gripped the console, refusing to be shaken. In that moment, she realized how much she valued being heard. Astra's voice broke the tense. "Silence. I detect a faint return signal. It is intermittent but present." Myra's pulse raced. She leaned closer to the speaker, hands trembling with relief and exhaustion. "Play it back," she ordered. Through the noise, she heard a brief, distorted voice. "Hold. Coming." Her heart soared, but she knew the odds of deciphering. More were slim. She needed clearer audio. Gently, she adjusted the antenna's angle, hoping for a better reception. Each small turn of the dial felt like turning the wheel of fate. As she worked, Mira recalled her training at the academy. She remembered long nights learning to patch signals and to improvise under pressure. Her instructor had once told her, "When all else fails, your mind is your greatest tool." Mira felt gratitude for that lesson. It guided her now in the silent expanse. She tightened a bolt, slipped a wire into a port, and tested the connection again. Results were immediate. The voice came through longer, steadier. "Yes, Myra," exclaimed softly. Astra echoed her joy. Signal clarity improved by 40%, it reported. Mira allowed herself a brief smile. She imagined Captain Arden Cross hearing this message on the Dauntless. She felt a surge of connection to that distant ship and its crew. Despite the empty void around her, she was not truly alone. She was part of something larger, a family of explorers who dared to reach beyond the known. Oxygen warnings flashed. Across her visor, 20% remaining. Mira stood and stretched her cramped limbs. Every breath burned, but she welcomed the pain as proof of life. She walked to the comm panel and triggered the playback again. This time the voice came. "Clearer Rains, we're here." Tears pooled in her eyes. She placed a hand over her heart, feeling gratitude and relief wash over her. The universe had sent an answer. Now, rescue was within reach. Mira slumped back into her seat, exhaustion pressing on her like gravity. She stared at the blinking beacon. With new hope, her voice shook as she spoke to Astra. "Keep monitoring." "Alert me to any change," Astra replied. "Affirmative, Lieutenant." Mira closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of peace. Then she straightened, gathering her resolve. The signal was alive, and so was she, the strength born of hope. She prepared for the next step in her fight to survive. Asterisk. Lieutenant Mira Rains watched the beacon pulse through her makeshift antenna, each flash a promise of rescue. She dared to hope, though every sound alert made her heart jump. Then her console blinked with an unidentified contact. "Unknown vessel approaching," Astra announced. Mira's breath caught. Could it be help at last? She gripped the armrest. Eyes wide with relief and disbelief as a distant shape moved through the debris field toward her hundreds of kilometers away. A lone pilot named Spectre navigated an experimental interceptor through the swirling chaos of rock and dust. Clad in a patched flight suit and guided by instinct more than orders, Spectre had spent months skirting official commands. When the faint distress pulse first registered, every rule in their book told them to ignore it. But something in the rhythm of that signal stirred a deep compassion. They turned the ship and aimed straight for danger. Spectre's cockpit was a web of blinking lights and patched circuits, a mirror of Myra's own desperate rig. They hummed a soft tune to calm their nerves as the interceptor shuddered through. An asteroid belt. Outside, jagged rocks grazed the shields, rattling the craft. Yet Spectre felt no fear, only purpose. In that moment, every hardship they'd faced felt worth it. Saving a fellow human being mattered more than any protocol or accolade. Back on the Vanguard, Mira watched the scanner display. The unknown vessel grew larger on her screen, its profile unfamiliar. Her pulse raced with a mixture of excitement and caution. Astra, run identity protocols, she said. The AI reported blank returns. Mira frowned. That's fine, she muttered softly, as long as they're human. She prepped the docking bay, checking that her suit's magnetic locks still worked. Each small detail felt critical. Spectre guided the interceptor close to the wreck. The beacon's glow casting long shadows on rusted hull plates. Their breath rasped inside the suit as they aligned the docking clamps. There was no time for hesitation. The void would only get colder and more hostile. With practiced precision, Spectre latched onto the scout ship's docking port. The moment the clamps clicked, relief washed over them. They exhaled a shaky breath, heart still pounding. Inside the cockpit, Mira heard the warning klaxon as the docking sequence began. She floated from her seat, reaching for the manual release lever. When the blocks locked into place, she felt the slight shudder of impact. Mira smiled through tears. She whispered thank you, though she wasn't sure if anyone could hear her over the fraying cum lines. She clipped her suit to the airlock hatch and prepared to open it. Spectre watched the hatch lights flicker. Through the small viewport, they saw Mira's silhouette slender, determined, and exhausted. A surge of warmth filled Spectre's chest. They activated the external hatch release and sealed off their cockpit. The hiss of equalizing pressure was louder than any alarm. When the airlock door slid open, Spectre stepped forward, visor raised. They offered a gloved hand to Mira, whose eyes shone with gratitude. When the two met in the airlock corridor, time seemed to slow. Mira blinked at the stranger before her. Spectre's face was gentle but firm, their eyes alive with kindness. Mira grasped Spectre's hand with both of hers. I thought no one would come, she said quietly, voice trembling. Spectre squeezed her hand. I heard you, they replied. I'm here now. In that simple moment, every fear melted away, replaced by the powerful bond between two souls who refused to give up. Back aboard the Dauntless, Captain Arden Cross watched the sensor readouts spike as the unknown interceptor approached his ship for guidance. He felt a swell of pride for his crew's resolve and awe for the pilot who dared to defy orders for the sake of compassion. He turned to Commander Lee. Prepare a welcome party, he said with a smile. We have a hero too. Celebrate. Lee nodded, her eyes bright. Together, they witnessed the first true connection born from chaos, human to human, reaching across the void. Lieutenant Mira Raines lay on the bio bed in the medical bay of the Dauntless, her breathing steady but shallow. The medics worked quickly around her, placing warm blankets over her trembling body. Every beep of the monitors felt like a victory for life itself. She opened her eyes as a calming voice spoke softly. You're safe now, Lieutenant. Mira managed a weak smile. She tasted relief in every breath. Nearby, Spectre stood by the observation window, watching the last slivers of the asteroid field fall away into darkness. The pilot's heart still beat fast from the rescue.
Act.
Spectre's patched flight suit smelled faintly of smoke and fuel. They ran a hand through their hair, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. They had followed a lonely signal across light years and found another human soul worth saving. Captain Arden Cross entered the bay, his heavy boots echoing on the polished floor. He stopped beside Myra's bed, eyes bright with gratitude. You did well, Lieutenant, he said, voice steady. We all did. He glanced at Spectre. And you'll thank you for your courage? On behalf of the fleet, I owe you my deepest respect. Spectre nodded, eyes flicking back to Mira's pale face. I only did what anyone should, they said. Softly, the medics finished their work and let Mira rest. As they stepped away, Mira's gaze turned to Spectre. I saw you out there, she whispered. I thought I was alone until you came. Spectre offered a small, reassuring smile. You never were, they replied, in that quiet moment. The bond between rescuer and rescued felt stronger than any starship's hull. Arden led them both to the lounge area, where warm light and soft seats welcomed them. Crew members paused in their duties to offer nods and smiles. The Dauntless felt alive with humane warmth. Spectre sat across from Myra, who now wore a clean uniform borrowed from the captain's quarters. Her hair was damp, but her eyes shone with renewed energy. Mira touched the small pendant at her neck, a keepsake from home. She turned to Spectre. "I want to know your name," she said. Spectre shrugged, the corners of their mouth lifting. "Call me Spectre," they answered. Myra nodded thoughtfully. "Then call me Mira." The simple exchange felt like the start of a deep friendship. Captain Cross joined them, placing 2 cups of steaming tea on the table. The rich aroma filled the air. "Drink this," he encouraged Mira. "It will warm you." Mira wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into her chilled fingers. Each sip tasted of safety and kindness. Spectre picked up the other cup and inhaled the scent. "This is good," they said, eyes closing in appreciation. Around them, the Dauntless glided through space with purpose. Through the large viewport, they watched nebulae swirl and distant stars wink. Mira leaned forward. "What happens next?" she asked. Arden's expression grew serious. "First, we chart a safe path home. Then, we share your story, your survival, and the pilot who came through the chaos. It will inspire all of humanity." Spectre set down their cup, fingers tapping the table. "I only followed what I felt," they said quietly. "But if my actions can help others know they matter, then I'm glad." Mira reached across the table and gently squeezed Spectre's hand. "You showed me that no one is ever truly lost," she said. Spectre's eyes glowed with emotion. "And you reminded me that hope can guide us through any darkness." A soft chime announced an incoming message on Arden's wrist console. He glanced at it and stood. "Status update. We've cleared the hazard zone. We'll enter open course in 2 hours. Medical reports show Lieutenant Rains will recover fully." Arden smiled at them both. "Enjoy this moment. You earned it." He turned to leave. Before the door slid shut, Mira called out, "Thank you, Captain. Thank you all." After he left, the lounge grew quiet again. Mira and Spectre sat side by side, watching the stars pass. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Spectre broke the silence. "You have a strength I admire," they said. Mira looked at them, warmth in her gaze. "And you have a heart that listens," she replied. In that simple truth, they found solace. Myra closed her eyes and let the gentle hum of the Dauntless lull her. The rescue was complete, but her journey had changed forever. She felt safer, stronger, and more connected than ever before. Spectre watched her, then whispered to the stars outside, "We will never leave a signal unanswered again." And in that vow, humanity's resolve burned brighter than any beacon. Lieutenant Mira Rains woke before dawn, the soft hum of the Dauntless, like a gentle heartbeat around her. Outside the viewport, distant stars slipped by in silent procession. She slipped into her uniform and walked down the corridor toward the training bay, determination shining in her eyes. This morning wasn't for rest, it was for preparation. She touched the pendant at her neck, a reminder of home, and squared her shoulders. Today, she would train with the interceptor pilots who made her rescue possible in the training bay. Spectre waited beside a holographic simulator. The room glowed. With shifting star maps and schematics of the wreck field, Spectre turned as Mira entered, greeting her with a small smile. "Ready?" they asked, voice steady. Mira nodded. More than ever. Together they strapped into the seats. At Spectre's side, Mira felt a rush of confidence. The simulator sprang to life, and they piloted through twisting debris, practicing the precise maneuvers that saved her life. As they dodged virtual asteroids, Spectre coached Mira through each turn. "When you're out there," Spectre said, "trust your instincts first, then the instruments." Mira guided the ship around a tumbling rock, heart pounding with excitement rather than fear. They completed the run flawlessly. The simulator shut down, and both exhaled in unison. Mira laughed, bright, genuine sound. "You make it look easy," she teased. Spectre shook their head. "You did the hard part by staying alive." Myra's eyes glistened with gratitude. Later in the mess hall, the crew welcomed Myra back, as if she had never left. She joined Spectre and a group of pilots at a long table. Plates of nutrient-rich porridge and fresh fruit sat before them. Spectre picked up a slice of melon and offered it to Mira. "Your favorite from the supply." "Stores," they said. Mira accepted it gratefully. Thank you. I missed Earth food. Around them, other pilots shared stories of daring flights and narrow escapes. Myra listened, enraptured by their camaraderie, feeling more at home than she had in days. After breakfast, Captain Arden Cross visited them. He held a digital tablet displaying incoming messages from Fleet Command. Your story is spreading fast, he told them. They call it the Beacon Miracle. Mira leaned forward, eyes wide. Arden nodded. They want to honor the resilience of Lieutenant Rains and the bravery of Spectre. Soon, there will be a ceremony on the main deck. Spectre looked surprised. I don't need accolades, they murmured. Arden placed a hand on Spectre's shoulder. Your actions remind us what humanity stands for. It deserves recognition. The ceremony that evening on the main deck filled the vast space with a soft golden light. Fleet officers and crew lined up in neat rows. At the center stood a polished flag bearing the emblem of humanity's united front. Myra and Spectre stepped onto the platform side by side. The crowd fell silent as Captain Cross spoke. He recounted the tale, a broken scout ship lost in the void, a lone beacon, shining hope, and a mysterious pilot who answered the call. His voice carried pride and wonder. When Cross finished, he presented both Mira and Spectre with medals forged. From starship alloys, the metals gleamed as they caught the deck lights. Mira felt warmth flood her chest. Spectre's eyes met hers, and they shared a quiet nod. As the crowd erupted in applause, Mira raised her hand in salute. The sound of clapping echoed like thunder through the deck. In that moment, she felt the strength of every human soul who believed in each other. Later, in a quiet corner of the deck, Mira and Spectre watched the stars again. The medals rested in their hands. Mira traced the raised edges thoughtfully. I never thought my beacon would bring so much, she said softly. Spectre nodded. Your hope gave me purpose. Mira turned to them with a bright smile. And your courage saved me. They stood in silence, letting the vastness of space remind them that even in the darkest corners, light could always find a way through. As the Dauntless charted its course back to the human border, Mira and Spectre joined the crew in planning future missions. They worked side by side, designing better signal relays and training new pilots to brave the unknown. Their partnership became a symbol of humanity's unity, soldiers, explorers, and rogues, all standing together. Each day, Mira felt her confidence grow. She knew now that every human beacon held power, and every pilot who heard it carried a responsibility in the quiet of her quarters. Mira wrote in her journal by the soft glow of a desk lamp. She described the rescue, the ceremony, and the bond she shared with Spectre. She ended with a promise to carry hope wherever she went, and to answer every signal, no matter how faint. The stars beckoned with infinite possibility. Inside, her heart shone with the unwavering belief that humanity together could pierce any darkness. Lieutenant Mira Rains stood on the observation deck in the soft glow of the nebula beyond the Dauntless. She watched as crew members bustled around new relay pods and signal buoys, their faces bright with purpose. Spectre joined her, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. They handed one to Mira, whose hands trembled slightly from excitement rather than cold. To every signal yet to come, Spectre said, raising their cup. Mira smiled and tapped hers gently against Spectre's. To hope, she replied softly, savoring the warmth. Later, in the ship's communications lab, Mira and Spectre gathered around a holotable displaying star charts. They plotted new routes for distress beacons, aiming to blanket the frontier with human signals. Mira adjusted one relay position. Near a cluster of dark asteroids, this spot sees many cargo runs, she noted. Spectre nodded. Now, no one can slip through the cracks. Their eyes met, and for a moment, they shared a quiet pride. Together, they were forging a future, where no voice would go unheard. That night, Myra found herself in the ship's quiet corridor. Drawn toward the trophy case where her medal and Spectre stood side by side, she reached out and touched the cool metal. In that reflection, she saw not just herself, but the countless people behind every rescue families waiting, friends hoping. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Mira activated her wrist console and read the words, New contact detected. Signal faint. Coordinates attached. Her heart leaped. Another soul in need. She hurried to the bridge, Spectre close behind. Captain Arden Cross looked up as they entered. "Lieutenant," he greeted. "You have a new distress pulse from the Helios sector." Mira studied the readout. The signal was weak, but steady, like a whisper across the void. "We launch relay drones and interceptor teams," she asked. Arden nodded. "Prepare your plans." Mira felt her resolve harden. Each new signal was a chance to prove humanity's promise. In the hangar bay, pilots readied sleek interceptor crafts under Myra's guidance. She walked among them, offering words of encouragement. "Trust your instincts," she said, echoing Spectre's own advice. The pilots nodded, inspired by her quiet confidence. Spectre watched from the bay doors, pride shining in their eyes. Mira glanced back and gave Spectre a grateful smile. She knew she could not have grown into this leader without their help. Moments later, Mira and Spectre climbed into their respective ships. Engines hummed as the hangar doors opened to the starry expanse. Myra's craft glided out, guided by her own hand in the network of relay beacons she had helped place. Spectre followed in the interceptor, staying close, side by side. They pierced the darkness toward the faint signal, their holes cutting through starlight like twin beacons themselves. As they approached the coordinates, the wreckage of a freighter drifted among shattered ice asteroids. A single life pod floated free, beacon blinking weakly. Mira's breath caught in her throat. She lined up her approach and eased her ship. Alongside the pod, Spectre mirrored her movements, secure in formation. In her come speaker, Mira heard a faint voice, weak but alive. "Please." The words trembled with relief. Mira secured her hatch and floated into the void, her suit lights cutting through the dark. Spectre followed close behind. Together they pried open the life pod and guided the survivor into safety. The person, trembling and pale, looked up with tear-filled eyes. Mira knelt beside them, offering a gentle hand. "You're safe now," she said. Spectre placed a reassuring hand on the pod's rim. "We heard your signal," they promised. The survivors' tears fell freely, but they were tears of hope. Back aboard the Dauntless, the medical staff swarmed the recovered crew member with care. Mira and Spectre stood in the corridor, watching as the wounded person was tended. Mira felt her heart swell with emotion, pride, relief, and an unshakable certainty that their work mattered. Spectre wrapped an arm around Myra's shoulders. "You saved another life," they said softly. Myra leaned into that comfort. "And we will save many more," she replied. That evening, Mira returned to the observation deck alone. She stared at the nebula, its swirling colors echoing the patterns of life and hope she helped weave. It closed her eyes and whispered a promise to the stars. "I will always answer the call." In the silent grandeur of space, her vow resonated like a constant beacon. Humanity's light would never dim, as long as there were hearts bold enough to send an answer every signal. Lieutenant Mira Raines stood at the bow of the Dauntless's observation platform as the stars drifted by like silent witnesses. The nebula's soft colors faded behind them, and ahead lay the human border, shining with countless white beacons. Each light marked a world, a station, or a lone ship waiting for connection. Mira's heart swelled with pride. She had helped build that network, and more important, she had shown that no person, no matter how small their signal, would ever be left unheard. Below her, the bridge crew worked in quiet harmony. Spectre stood beside Captain Arden Cross, scanning reports from the latest rescue. Arden turned when he saw Mira and motioned her over. "We've received dozens more distress calls since our last mission," he said, voice warm. "Your leadership inspired a fleet-wide initiative too. Deploy relay buoys. Soon, every sector will be within reach." Mira nodded, chest tight with emotion. "That is the future I dreamed of," she replied softly. Arden smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You made it real." Spectre joined them, adjusting the strap of their flight suit. "Lieutenant," they said, "the next relay buoy is ready for launch. It will cover the Tiberian Gap, where ships often vanish." Mira looked out at the dark stretch of space. "Then let's light it up," she said, resolve shining in her eyes. Spectre nodded. Together they descended to the hangar bay, where a sleek transport ship waited, bathed in pale light. Inside the transport's cabin, Mira and Spectre reviewed the deployment plan. The buoy floated like a small silver orb, its panels folded tight. Mira traced the coordinates on the holomap, imagining the lonely traders and explorers who would one day see its glow and no help was near. She placed a hand on the buoy's cool surface. "Go," she whispered, as if giving the device a blessing. Spectre secured the harness straps. "Here's to every life we might save," they replied. The transport launched through the hangar doors, engines humming with calm power. Myra and Spectre watched from a viewport as the buoy ejected into space, unfolding its solar sails and activating its beacon. It pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady rhythm. In that simple flash, it became a promise. Someone out there would never fade into silence again. Back on the deck, Mira and Spectre returned to the observation platform. The soft hum of the Dauntless felt like a living thing beneath their feet. Mira turned to Spectre. "I never expected to find more than rescue," she confessed. "But I found purpose." Spectre smiled, eyes reflecting starlight. "Purpose found you," they said. "And you found me?" Mira nodded, gratitude filling her voice. "We saved each other." A soft chime announced a new incoming transmission. Arden answered at a nearby console, then looked up with a broad grin. "It's from Fleet Command. They're naming the network the Rain Spectre Relay Initiative." Mira's breath caught. Spectre's eyes widened. Arden continued. "They say these buoys and the stories behind them will become the legacy of our time." Mira and Spectre exchanged a stunned glance, then turned to each other. Neither said a word, but in that silence lay every emotion: pride, humility, hope. As night fell on the Dauntless, the crew dimmed the deck lights to watch the border's horizon. Mira and Spectre stood side by side, arms touching gently. Beyond the glass, white beacons blinked steadily, joining the glow of billions more. Mira closed her eyes and remembered the broken scout ship, the makeshift antenna, the lonely beacon that started it all. She felt the weight of her journey, from desperate survivor to leader of a movement. Spectre placed a hand on her back. "Now?" they asked quietly. Mira opened her eyes and looked at the horizon. "Now," she said with certainty, "we keep answering every call. Keep lighting the darkness." Spectre smiled, their silhouette framed by starlight. "Always," they agreed. In the hush of space, two human figures stood tall against the infinite night. Their story, the beacon that went unanswered, the pilot who defied the void, and the network of hope they built would guide all who ventured beyond the known. And as the Dauntless sailed toward home, its crew carried a single truth: as long as even one signal flickered in the darkness, humanity's light would never fade.